We all love a clear winner in an election, right? Well, a recent state election in South Australia seemed to have exactly that. But according to some analysis from Sky News Australia, if you only look at who won, you're missing the real story. There's a surprising political shift buried in those results, and it tells us a lot about who's actually gaining ground.
So, on the surface, this all looks pretty straightforward. The Labour Party, led by Peter Malinauskas, didn't just win, they totally cleaned up. We're talking a supermajority. By any traditional measure, that's a huge, decisive, landslide victory. End of story, right?
Well, not so fast. Here's where things get interesting. If Labour's win was so massive, why does the Sky News analysis say the actual big story is about the party that officially came in third? It's a bit of a puzzle, and that's what we're going to unpack right now. To really get what this argument is about, we have to look past the number of seats won and dive right into the primary vote. The analysis from Sky News suggests these raw numbers tell a completely different and maybe more important story about where politics in that state are headed. And here it is. This is the heart of the whole thing. Yeah, Labour came in first with their vote share. But look at what happened next. One Nation pulled in 22.5% of the primary vote, actually leapfrogging the established Liberal Party. The source says this makes them the second most popular party by this key metric. And that is a truly massive shift.
And here's another little twist in the tale. Even though Labour won that supermajority of seats, the Sky News report points out that their actual primary vote went down by 2.3%. The analysis suggests that even in their own traditional strongholds, they were losing a bit of ground, and that a lot of those votes were swinging over to One Nation.
So, you might be asking, how does this all translate into actual power? Well, the projection from the source suggests One Nation could end up with somewhere between 3 to 5 seats in the lower house. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but for a minor party in South Australia's political history, that kind of outcome is described as completely unheard of.
So, as you can imagine, this surge didn't exactly go unnoticed. How did the major parties react? Well, the analysis presented by Sky News claims the main takeaway was, simply, fear. A sudden realization that One Nation is being seen as a real threat to their base, not just some fringe movement.
For proof of this, the commentary points to a social media video put out by a federal Labour MP. They compared its tone to those old anti-piracy ads, you wouldn't steal a car. The argument here is that Labour is trying to frame a vote for One Nation as something not just politically different, but somehow morally wrong.
The Sky News commentators really didn't pull any punches on this one. They called the video a ridiculous caricature. They highlighted the use of sinister music and the attempt to paint One Nation as a boogeyman. They basically dismissed it as a cheap trick, a scare tactic that, in their view, just doesn't work with voters anymore.
And for even more evidence, the analysis points to something really unusual. The Premier, in his own victory speech, apparently spent a big chunk of time talking about, you guessed it, One Nation. The commentators called this a backhanded compliment because it showed that the party that officially came in third was clearly the one on the winner's mind.
So all of this, the numbers, the reaction, it all builds to the source's central argument. This election result wasn't just some random protest vote. No, they frame it as a vindication for One Nation leader Pauline Hanson and the platform she's been pushing for decades.
And just so we're all on the same page, vindication basically means getting proof that you were right all along. The source is arguing that this election result is that proof for what Hanson has been saying for years. So, what specific ideas does the source claim were vindicated? Well, it's a pretty consistent set of themes, raising concerns about mass migration, a focus on what they call national values, and pushing back against the woke green dream and corporate DEI policies. These, according to the analysis, are the key issues that really hit home with a growing block of voters.
And really, this quote from the broadcast just sums it all up perfectly. As interpreted by the source, the message coming out of this election is a direct challenge from Hanson to the political establishment, and it's basically, hey, I told you so. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. This story isn't just about one state election. The source sees this as a really pivotal moment, one that has some major implications for the entire country's political landscape.
The Sky News analysis presents a pretty clear story here. For a long time, One Nation was often dismissed as a party that just emanates from Queensland. But they argue this result proves they can successfully sell their message in a very different state. And if they can win here, their conclusion is, well, the sky's the limit.
To poll a primary vote of over 22% and turn that into actual seats in Parliament is something the commentators described as an extraordinary feat. In their view, this isn't just a win at the state level.
It's the critical groundwork for a much bigger national expansion.
And that really brings us to the source's final takeaway. They frame this result as a growing political threat to the two-party system we're all used to. So the big question they leave us with isn't if the major parties will have to respond, but how on earth they're going to adapt if this trend just keeps on growing.